Starting this journey in the middle of the day, a sense of dread lingered. I was unprepared for what I was about to witness, the atrocities and depravity humanity could conjure. As I scrolled through the murky links, encountering dead sites and clandestine black markets, I had no idea that a chilling shock awaited me. In 2012, after hearing all the horror stories about the deep web, I wanted to check it out myself in a way I kind of expected nothing other than the scams guides for assassins, people requesting child pornography, and some underground markets. However, I prepared for the worst, and frankly, I was more worried about getting in trouble by authorities rather than having my mind bleach for the near future. Even after 2 or 3 hours of procrastination, nothing prepared me for what I saw. It was during the middle of the day when I began my search. Of course, there's no deep web Google or anything, but rather a wiki with a lot of links. The links are different than the links you may know of. These links have no way of knowing what lays behind it, just numbers and text at the end. It was boring at first. A lot of dead sites, more than expected, eBay-style markets for weapons, military-grade weapons, even services, and of course drugs. I came across a chat room where I saw a darker side of people I never thought was possible. So many people that were mentally ill, threatening others, requesting child pornography. It was truly disgusting. 2 hours later, I came across one site that ended my little adventure in the waste of human consciousness, a cult site, perhaps with little info other than an email address and some religious mumbo-jumbo. However, there was a video embedded in the site's homepage. Like a naive child, I clicked it without a care in the world. The video shot with a crappy video camera. Perhaps it was shot in the early to mid-1997s. It was a man with a mask and a knife. As quickly as that scene showed another presented itself, he was cutting something in similar fashion to a butcher shop. It was then and there I realized the body was bipedal and without fur. It was a human being. He was violently cutting at the legs, followed by the screams of this person. A new scene showed the decapitation of the head. Another shot of the man with the mask, followed by a picture of a church with a weird symbol. This was a cult recruiting website. It was followed by more bodies being cut up and hung in ways more gruesome than you may expect. Shortly after, I turned my computer off and I stayed off it for quite some time. This was my first and last visit to the deep web. I have never contemplated going back. Music. Since number 2, I am a computer technician by profession. I work for a company that is contracted by local businesses and private consumers to set up internet connections, install software, and repair any sort of computer problems that they can come up with. So naturally, I get all kinds of crazy stories and problems that these people can come up with. I swear some of these people just don't know how to work your computer, even in this day and age. Anyway, one day I get a call from a local business complaining that their internet is acting up and that they must have a virus. So I shake my head thinking that someone must have unplugged a network cable or downloaded a Trojan horse. Accidentally get up and drive over to the business to address the problem. As soon as I arrive, the man who called me immediately spots me and starts going on and on about hackers and how much he hates Microsoft Windows and how many viruses it creates and all that nonsense that I usually receive when addressing business problems. He leads me to his computer, and I pull out my laptop and sit down in front of it and begin to work. He tells me good luck and walks away to go do whatever it is he does in his downtime. I open up the browser. He uses Internet Explorer, to no surprise, and it opens up a blank page. He doesn't even have a home page, so I try connecting to Google. Com 404. All right, well, I know that Google.com definitely exists, so there's a problem with his internet connection. I open his network and sharing center to see if he has a built-in troubleshooter to diagnose the problem, but I give myself a well-deserved facepalm when I see that he isn't connected to any network at all. So I search for networks and find a few wireless connections for him to connect to. They're all web encrypted, and I'm almost positive that he doesn't know the key, so I break up my laptop and run a web cracking tool to get his computer up and running again. As I'm waiting for my tool to find the web key, another network suddenly shows up on my computer. This one has an unprotected password consisting of random letters and numbers. Now I'm extremely bored waiting for this guy to return, so I decided to connect to it and take a little look around to see where this is coming from. I connect without problems and open up my toolkit of cracking tools to see if I can find a source for this connection. As I'm having fun hacking away at this unprotected network, my computer freezes up only for a second or two, but this doesn't happen much and it caught me by surprise. I shrugged it off as this poor internet speed up here and kept it going. A couple minutes later, however, it happened again, and a few minutes after that once again, each time getting longer and longer. Weird, I thought to myself. What's with this network? It was then that things started getting really interesting. After the long string of pauses, my screen flickered a little bit, and out of nowhere my browser opened by itself. Now I was worried that I had somehow infected my computer in some kind of malware by connecting to this network, and I proceeded to close the browser and began to disconnect from the network. before anything worse could happen, but I couldn't disconnect no matter how many times I clicked the little disconnect button. My computer didn't respond despite everything else on my computer screen running fine. I thought to myself, this is going to be a long day, just as I was about to hit the power button on my laptop to perform a hard reset. My browser opened again. This time with a little chat box opening hello. It said. I stared at the screen for a couple seconds, not quite knowing what was going on. I want to talk to you now. I had heard about these AI programs that have all these programmed responses to simulate conversation with people, and I was not impressed. This was one nasty virus. You need to leave this network. Now, this is your last warning, HM. Maybe an automated security program designed to keep hackers out. I'll have to admit I was impressed with it. I'd never seen anything like this before. I'm telling you one last time, leave now. I don't know what made me do it, but I responded to the program, or what the next response scared me more than anything in this world ever has. The program began listing information about me: my name, address, telephone number, credit card information, my parents' names, their address. My heart sank in my chest, and all the color immediately left my face. I couldn't move. I just sat there paralyzed with fear. But what came next was even worse. Don't look at me like that. The webcam was on. You really shouldn't stare. You might see something you'll regret. Suddenly, the most horrifying images you could ever imagine flashed on my screen. Images of disabled humans, human sacrifices, detached limbs, cannibals eating people, and video clips of mass suicides and firing squads. My heart was racing, and my body was shaking in utter fear of the images I was being shown. They're seared into my brain. These were things that no one should ever have to see. With all the strength I had left, I pressed the power button on my computer and slammed it shut. I ran to the bathroom and threw up several times, drenched in sweat and barely able to compose myself. It took me about 20 minutes to even consider going back to my computer, and even then, it was hard to approach it. I looked over at my client's computer. It was connected to the wireless network I had been cracking earlier. It was working fine now. Just then, my client returned and thanked me for fixing his internet. I didn't say anything. I just grabbed my laptop and left. Number 3. So, I decided to visit the deep web, the dark web, whatever it's called. You know what I'm talking about. The internet's lowest circle of hell, the place where pathologies abound, where pedophiles and drug dealers rub elbows with arms merchants and killers for hire. My purpose? Call it morbid curiosity. I was looking for the most extreme content I could find. I consider myself a student of the human condition and am fascinated by man's darker urges, his apparent hatred of himself. I wanted to measure the depths of his depravity and see what I could find. Knowledge for its own sake or something. I come from a wealthy family and have never known want. Money was never a problem for me. I figured I'd have to pay for my curiosity, so I loaded up on Webcash and Bitcoin, several $1,000s worth. I won't detail the directions to this dark web. If you have the desire, it only takes a little bit of research. You'll also want to use a throwaway computer, unless you're tech savvy. I was burned more than a few times, but I anticipated that. After 2 weeks of searching and continuously being ripped off, I finally came across something pretty interesting. I was looking for the so-called red rooms, and after some exchanges with a certain someone on a certain message board, I was provided with a link to a live stream. He assured me it was genuine and unlike anything I had ever seen. I have no doubt it was real. If you saw it, you would know. It cost me a mere $500. The camera displayed a room about the size of a large bedroom. Mulch covered the floor, and what appeared to be a giant rock took up one corner. Opposite was a kiddie swimming pool filled with water. I couldn't even begin to imagine what was about to happen. Suddenly, a portion of the ceiling opened up, and a girl was lowered into the room, suspended upside down by her feet with what looked like giant forceps. Her hands were bound behind her back, and her mouth was covered with tape. She appeared to be about 20 years old, maybe younger, and was clearly terrified. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then, from under the rock, a head emerged. It was a snake, an anaconda, I believe. Slowly, very slowly, it came out of hiding, its forked tongue flicking in the air. The girl's eyes bulged with the most profound terror I have ever seen. The snake continued its creeping advance. It was massive, at least 30 feet long. Its head rose within inches of her, tongue darting in and out. It loomed over her, all coiled aggression. Mercifully, she fainted. Whatever mechanism was holding the forceps began shaking the girl like a toy in front of a cat. The snake's head pulled back slightly, its tongue still flickering. It remained still for a few long seconds, and then, without warning, it struck. Its jaws clamped down on her throat, and its body whipped around her with tremendous speed, pulling her to the floor and squeezing the life out of her as the giant forceps were lifted and the ceiling panel closed. I watched, stunned, as the snake uncoiled and released its teeth from her throat. It then unhinged its jaw and began to swallow her whole. The entire process took less than 5 minutes, and it was all bought and paid for by me. See you in hell, I guess. Number 4. I'm posting this through a proxy, so don't even think about trying to find me. I already have enough trouble with people trying to track me down as it is. It all started a few months ago when I found a good source of amphetamines on a deep web marketplace that I won't name. I live in a town so small and bland that even the local high school kids don't bother selling drugs. It's boring as sin here, which is one of the reasons I started ordering speed online in the first place. I was always very cautious. I tumbled my bitcoins carefully and ensured that every transaction was highly encrypted. And yes, before you even ask, the proxies I used were fully configured and trustworthy. It wasn't the technology that failed me. It was a single lapse in judgment. To one trusted seller, I gave my real physical address. At first, I was only ordering small packages for my personal use, so it was easy to have them delivered to the house of an elderly woman who lived nearby. Her live-in nurse consistently checked the mail very late in the day, so there was never much of an issue retrieving the speed before it was noticed. But as my habit grew, I began introducing my close friends to the drug. Eventually, I contacted my seller about ordering much larger quantities, enough for me to start selling locally. We began to work like business partners in a supply chain, and I placed substantial orders regularly. The drugs originally came in a small padded envelope, but now they would have to be shipped in a larger cardboard box. While the envelopes fit easily inside a mailbox, a box like this would have to be delivered to the front door. I couldn't have the mailman walking up to a stranger's driveway to ring the doorbell, so I requested that the drugs start being sent directly to me. By this point, I knew the seller was a legitimate and reliable source, so trusting him with my address seemed safer than the alternative. We had become somewhat like casual friends and began doing the same things together, like visiting the same deep web communities and chatting when we were both online. My seller was wickedly funny at times and genuinely seemed like a nice guy. I guess that's part of why I trusted him. But then again, it's not exactly his fault what happened. Recently, I received a completely unsatisfactory shipment. The pressed pills looked right at first, but they tasted like bitter flour and were far too brittle. They produced no high at all. I had been stiffed. When I checked the marketplace, I found that my seller's accounts had been closed. He left no messages to explain it, and I assumed he had just ripped me off. Still, it didn't seem like something he would do. I wondered if I had misjudged him. Yesterday, I noticed one of his accounts actively posting on one of the small community forums we both used to visit together. I immediately contacted him through a private message, asking whether he knew that his last batch was complete bunk. It took about 25 minutes to get a response, but suddenly, messages began pouring in. It started with this: "The person you're trying to contact has passed away. Sorry. He's such a homebody. Nobody has knocked on his door the whole time I've been here. 3 whole weeks without a single visitor. Isn't that funny? I'm almost done eating him. I wasted very little soft tissue. He had almost no food in the house when I killed him, so I didn't even need to clear out the fridge to store his meat. I haven't even needed to take out the trash yet. Isn't that sort of funny?" I've been poking around his computer too. Going through his files is like solving a big puzzle cube, but I'm making progress. I wrote back, accusing him of taking a joke way too far, and demanded an explanation for the last shipment. His response? "They're bone meal. You never smelled bone meal? Didn't you ever have a garden as a kid or anything?" I thought that would be obvious. The skeleton was the only thing I hadn't figured out what to do with yet. Then I realized I could solve that issue and play a little prank. Come on, don't you think that's a funny idea? There was a brief pause, and then another short volley of messages appeared before I could even form a response. "You know, you actually don't live too far away from where I am now, judging by the address I have here. You and this guy are just over the state line from each other. Isn't that something? Well, be seeing you. What do you guys think? It's probably just a scheme to scare me off, right? I stared at the screen, my heart pounding, every fiber of my being frozen in fear. My eyes darted around my room, every shadow suddenly alive with menace. I tried to convince myself that it was a sick joke, some twisted prank to scare me, but a part of me knew this wasn't a game. I reached for my phone, hands trembling, trying to call the police, but then I saw it. A message notification. One last message from the account, the final nail in my coffin. Knock, knock. And just as the words appeared, there it was, a faint knocking sound. At first, I thought it was my imagination, but then it came again, louder this time. My door. Someone was outside my door. Whoever, or whatever, it was, they knew where I lived, and they were already here. The screen of my computer went black, and I was left in the dark, my pulse thundering in my ears, my breath shallow, waiting for the inevitable. If you want to hear more terrifying tales like this, don't forget to like, share, comment, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. You won't want to miss the next chilling story that might just keep you up all night. Sweet dreams. Skull Eye Ghost.